everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today I have a bit of an interesting video for you guys. I'm actually going to be exploring the cottagecore aesthetic / art style. So if you're unaware of what cottagecore is, I'm going to describe it to you. So cottagecore is an aesthetic inspired by a romanticized interpretation of Western agricultural life. It is centered on ideas around a more simple life and harmony with nature's specific themes associated with the survival of the environment, food, gardening, and caring for people. The cottagecore aesthetic can include things like flowers, gardens of any kind, flowers, fruit, vintage crockery, most notably tea sets, people spending time outdoors, patterns that can include paisley, stripes, faded floral, and of course gingham. Older style clothes, kind of more loose fitting and flowy stuff. Overalls are also quite common, and things like picnic baskets, which you can see me drawing right now actually. So basically cute stuff like that you would probably hear about in like a fairy tale or something. So to begin this, I'm going to be doing a little bit more of a simple illustration, and then after that I'm going to be diving into a more complex and detailed illustration. And yeah, I just wanted to see if I could sort of, wet my toes first and just draw something which obviously has that kind of vibe, and practice a little bit before I actually get into the crazy stuff. So I'm actually drawing in Procreate today, and I am drawing a few little items to begin, and they include obviously this picnic basket, as well as you can see now, I'm drawing a little bit of a mushroom / toadstool. I'm trying to concentrate a little bit more on warm colors, soft shading that still has a little bit of natural texture in it, and really sort of dainty kind of line art. As you can see, the line art is a little bit thinner than I usually would draw, and later on it's even more so. But I'm also doing light colored line art as well, because I really want this to feel like a simple yet complex illustration, if that makes sense. I want it to have like relaxed vibes, but I also want to have lots of pretty little details here and there that make the whole thing just look really nice and cute. So as you can see, we have a cute little teacup here, and I've actually given it golden edges, which I really like because I used that line art, but I made it colored, and that actually helped to add a little bit of extra detail to that teacup. And now we're going in with a old style watering can, which I really actually enjoyed drawing, especially since I added in some little flower patterns on it, and just some really nice little grungy textures all over that watering can as well. Even a little bit of rust here and there, just to make it look sort of old style and simple and cute. After this, I wanted to add a few more green things in, because obviously I wanted to have a little green into this illustration. So I went in and drew a little bunch of roses. These are like little hand-picked roses that I guess someone picked from their garden and wrapped a little bit of twine around them to collect them. Maybe they're going to store them or display them later on their, in their house somewhere. And I actually really like the way that those roses turned out, because the colors are really nice. That red is really nice and rich, while the green is still bright, but also a more natural green color. And I think they work really well together, because obviously they're complementary colors. I really had to try and make sure that the line art on those leaves, and especially the stems of those roses, were really, really thin, because I didn't want it to look too cluttered, and I still want to have lots of detail there. After this, I wanted to add some fruit into the illustration too, so I decided on a green fruit, which was actually pears. And I actually really like the way that those pears turned out. I think the colors look really nice and bright while still natural, and the textures that I used a few different sort of grungy paintbrushes in Procreate to color in those pears in a way that would look natural, and I think the colors and everything that I picked looked pretty nice. And to be honest, I would eat those pears, and I reckon they're quite sweet and delicious. I'm really liking the way that these little items turned out, and I've actually decided that I want to add them into the final illustration as well, so that everything is going to be in there together and looks cool. So my ideas for the final piece that I'm going to do today is quite detailed, and it was quite ballsy for me to decide to draw so many details in the one illustration that you're going to see, but I'm really glad I did it because it was just so fun. So we're starting off here with a little bit of a cottage backyard scene, as you could say, and I started off with the cottage because, well, it was the easiest thing to draw, and I kind of based everything off where I put the cottage. So as you can see, I drew in the rough shapes of the house, and then I went in with the fence and the little bush in front of the fence, and that is actually going to help draw your eye towards the cottage. And as you can see, I did use a little bit of perspective in that. I made the fence look bigger as it came out towards you, and that really helps to push the cottage more into the background, and then we can draw some things in front of the cottage for the foreground. So as you can see, I do have quite a number of things here sketched out, and I'm starting to ink them as well, and they include a nice little garden bed, as you can see, with some little bushes in it. We also have some chickens in front of that, and then we also have some pot plants, a tree, a table more deeper into the foreground, as you can see at the lower part of the illustration, and I'm actually planning on putting a whole bunch of stuff on top of that table as well. And yeah, we also have this little cobblestone or rock path, and that is also another way for me to draw your eye towards the cottage and just push it further into the background as well. As you can see that the rocks in that path are quite a bit bigger and thicker outlined towards the bottom of the illustration, and then it sort of like tapers in a little bit towards the cottage, and that's also a way for me to help push the perspective in this. Another thing I do want to mention as well is that I drew some clothes hanging on a makeshift clothesline in that tree, and I really like that I added that because with the whole cottagecore aesthetic, a lot of the time you will see sort of older style clothing. So as you can see, I've sort of drawn a dress here, and you can kind of think it's either an apron or a dress. To be honest, I didn't really know when I was drawing it. I just wanted to draw something cute and frilly, and that's what we achieved. So now I'm going into the vines on the cottage, as you can see, and I really wanted to add sort of vines growing all over a cottage because I saw that quite a bit in my research, and I felt like it was really cute and just a really nice little detail that you can have, you know, growing over a man-made structure to make it look more natural, I guess. I don't know, that's just what I took away from it. And since we're going full ham with the plants today, I decided to add some little flowers in planter boxes by the windows as well. And I'm actually quite glad that I did that because they just look really cute sitting there in the windows. Now there's one thing that I was actually really excited into getting drawing, and I don't know why, but it was the table. I guess I just don't draw that many tables, and I really like the idea of a round wooden table sitting in the garden, and it doesn't really look like an outdoor table. It kind of looks like, you know, your kitchen table or your dining table or something like that. But I really like how it's just out there in the garden, and there's a little mouse sitting on it. Perhaps it's eyeing off some food that is sitting on the table later. There's a lot of tiny details in this illustration, and I'm actually quite glad because I actually made the drawing canvas for this quite a bit bigger. It's like double the size of my usual drawing canvas that I would do, but I did that on purpose because I know there was going to be lots of fine little lines, tiny details, and just lots of little things hidden throughout the illustration. So now we are getting into the coloring, and oh my goodness, this drawing took me so long. I had pretty much finished the line art, and it had already taken me about 8 hours of tracked time, and I know this because Procreate actually saves the time you have spent completely on an illustration, and yeah, it took me quite a while, and I kept checking that time, and I was like, wow, I've spent like 8 hours on this and the line art hasn't been done yet. And I was a little bit stressed out too, to be honest, because my video is a bit later than usual, as you can tell, but To be honest, I'm not mad because the amount of time that I put into it, I'm actually really happy with, the quality of it. But yeah, with the coloring style, I tried to keep it mostly natural because, that's the whole theme of the illustration, and I tried to have a lot of, interesting textures in there. I used quite a bit of the grungy sort of brushes, as you can tell from the previous sort of little drawings that I did. I did the same kind of style, but I also tried to make sure that a lot of areas also had some soft shading as well, because I didn't want it to be too complex. So I did use the airbrush here and there, and I also used a few wood texture brushes and sort of more painterly brushes, just to try and get a nice interesting mix of textures that would make it look more realistic. So for the colors, I mostly kept them all pretty natural. I used a lot of greens, also some browns and beiges with some hints here and there of purple and blue and pink. That's a lot of colors actually, but I tried to make sure that they were all harmonious and they all sort of made sense, and it wasn't like crazy coloring or anything like that. Also, when I get into coloring in the line art, that is also where it starts to shine quite a bit, because you don't actually realize how much black, pure black is in your illustration until you get rid of it all, and it's all just really bright and colorful, as you can see. Once you add in those colors in the line art, some details just seem to pop out a little bit more, and it just looks way more brighter and more colorful, and also more natural, because naturally things in the real world don't actually have black outlines. But yeah, I have to say I had the most fun when I was coloring in the wood textures. I actually used a really nice brush for that, and it was the twig brush in I think it was the organic section in the paintbrushes in Procreate, and I haven't actually used that one before, but I really liked the way that it looked for a wood texture. It just had some really nice lines through it. As you can see, it really worked well for the table in the foreground as well. Once I added those highlights and shadows with that brush, it really started to look a little bit more realistic while still having a sort of more illustrated vibe. Now, one part that does look a little bit less realistic is the clothing, and that's because I pretty much didn't do too much shading or even textures on those at all, and that was because I really wanted to have a nice sort of gingham pattern on those. And later on I did actually add in some more shading, and it did make it look more realistic, but I really wanted to have that little gingham sort of checkedy pattern just to try and get that cute sort of picnic vibe. Now for some of the textures on the bushes and the trees and some of the leaves and stuff like that, I did end up using a leaf brush texture. It was like a patterny sort of brush in Procreate, and I know I could have probably drawn all of those leaves and it probably would have looked a little bit better and less like I used a paintbrush for that, but to be honest, I was about 12 hours into this illustration, and I really did not feel like just going in and drawing around lots of tiny little leaves. And to be honest, I actually really like the look of those leaves on the tree anyways. I feel like they do look quite realistic while also still keeping to that illustrative vibe. And I also did the same thing with the grass as well, except with the grass I actually used two different types of grass brushes, and I kind of mixed them in a little bit and blurred here and there and had a few different layers with different opacities so that it didn't look just like I used, a cheap brush. To be honest, I don't think using a brush like that is actually cheating. It's just my brain is like, no, you have to draw every single blade of grass individually. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. It's going to take me like 40 hours to draw every single blade of grass individually. I don't know, I put these pressures on myself, I guess. But as we're getting all of these little details together and in here, the illustration is starting to look quite a bit more complete, and this is where I got really excited because it was all coming together. But I also felt like I was a little bit done with this illustration too. I don't know, I guess I'm just not used to, you know, spending 12 hours on the same project and having my video a little bit later than usual, which to be honest I do quite often, but I'm trying not to do that nowadays. But I'm not salty. I really love this illustration and it's turning out quite well, and probably one of my favorite digital illustrations as of late, just because of the sheer detail in the whole thing, but also the calm vibe that it also has. It's hard to actually draw something that has so many tiny details in it, but still it feels kind of calm. I don't know, maybe that's just a me thing. Now, I actually, when I started this, was tempted to have a person in the illustration, but then I actually decided against that because I didn't want it to feel like a background on a portrait. I really didn't want it to be like that. So I decided to have no people in it, but some cute little fuzzy animals in there, and they would sort of be tied into the illustration instead of like the main subjects. After this, it was just a matter of the fine details. As you can see, I'm drawing in a cute little doily on the table, and after that we're going to add all of those little items onto the table as well, and I can't wait to see how that turns out. But yeah, I really like this illustration and I love the way it turned out, and I'm actually really excited to explore more with this kind of style and this kind of subject matter. Maybe I'll do a cottagecore dragon sometime in the future. Let me know if you guys are interested in that. But yeah, I really love how there are so many details crammed into this one little illustration, but it doesn't feel cluttered or anything like that. It still has that sort of, you know, chill, relaxed vibe, and I'm really happy with the final results. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it so much, but I am kind of glad that it's done. But I am very happy that I did it, because this is probably my most detailed illustration that I've done in quite a while. So if you haven't already, please smash that subscribe button, because I'm not done yet. I want to do more art and I can't wait to show you guys. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone.